Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by Adam and Eve. Use the link in the description and code MIDNIGHT to get 50% off one item plus free shipping in the US and Canada. Ever since its launch in 1998, Rotten Tomatoes has only become more and more central to the film landscape. Despite its very simplistic, fresh, or rotten setup, or maybe because of it, it often dominates the discourse around film criticism. Whether it's the usual social media arguments over the split between the critics and user scores, or the endless comparisons between two movies' quality using their RT scores as evidence, they've become a staple of talking about film on the internet. And to a large extent, I do get why. These scores provide shorthand for how a film was received by critics and some audiences, which can be really helpful at times. I know in the past I've even cited Rotten Tomato scores on this channel, but there's always been very strong critiques of this site, with Martin Scorsese even going as far as to write an op-ed for The Hollywood Reporter in 2017 just to voice his distaste for it. But recently there's been a lot more attention brought to the inner workings of the website thanks to a really interesting piece from Lane Brown over on Vulture. I'm going to be talking about that article a lot in the early going here, so I'm going to put a link to it down below. Real legwork seems to have gone into the reporting on this, and it's well worth a read. To boil it down, while it would be inaccurate to say that film studios and distributors can pay for good Rotten Tomato scores, they have become really good at managing them. The article cites the little-seen 2018 Daisy Ridley film Ophelia. After it was initially met with a tepid response by critics at Sundance and had yet to secure a distributor, the film PR company Bunker 15 sent emails out to some smaller critics listed as Rotten Tomatoes approved, with one email reading, "It's a Sundance film and the feeling is that it's been treated a bit harshly by some critics. I'm sure sky-high expectations were the culprit." So the teams involved feel like it would benefit from more input from different critics, and they'd pay these critics $50 to go see the movie. And while they didn't have to give it a positive review, it appears that, allegedly, negative reviews would appear off the main blog, on smaller blogs where they would not be listed on Rotten Tomatoes. And after this round of critics saw the movie, the film's RT score went up, and it ended up garnering distribution. Now, to be totally fair, when this was pointed out to Rotten Tomatoes, they apparently responded very quickly and delisted a bunch of the movies Bunker 15 had done PR work for, and put out a statement about how important the integrity of their scores is to them. Again, I definitely encourage you to read the full story, but the fact that this was allegedly being done for $50 a review tells me that moving the needle on Rotten Tomato scores probably isn't too difficult. And the days of old newspaper critics being the only ones on there, which to be fair had problems of its own, is long behind us, with it just being extremely easy to get approved as a critic with a Rotten Tomato profile these days. So while that score can be an interesting metric to look at, seeing it as the end-all be-all of a film's quality is just a very bad idea. But I want to take a step back from the specifics of that piece and talk about how my relationship with Rotten Tomatoes as a website has kind of changed over time. Not as a content creator or whatever, just as someone who reads about film and TV online a lot. Because the thing is, it didn't used to occupy such a huge space in film culture, and I think we were better for it. So I remember back in like 2005 or so, I used to constantly visit this website that was called jumptheshark.com. I don't think it exists anymore, like TV Guide bought it and I think they like immediately ruined it. But for those who don't know the term, it referred to an episode of the 70s sitcom Happy Days where the Fonz water skis over a shark, and the term came to kind of mean the moment where a TV show did something so terrible that it never fully recovered. On the website, you'd vote on moments where this happened in specific shows, from Jack Bauer's daughter being attacked by a cougar in 24, to Aunt Viv being recast in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It wasn't exactly scientific, it wasn't pretending to be, it was just a lot of fun. And back then, that's kind of how I viewed Rotten Tomatoes too. Sure, Rotten Tomatoes had a lot more going for it, but they were both simple little websites that attempted to put a number on people's film or TV opinions. Slowly but surely, though, it became super central to film culture and marketing. A Rotten Tomatoes score went from an interesting number to check among online nerds to the single most important metric of a film's critical success, with some serious box office implications, to the point where you can find certified fresh stamps on all kinds of film marketing material and Blu-ray covers now. I think that's giving those scores a weight and importance that this fun Web 1.0 site was never meant to bear. While a lot of fun websites from that era, like Jump the Shark, just kind of faded away, Rotten Tomatoes kept chugging along, building an empire off a very simple, reductive system that wasn't created by or for filmmakers or artists. The website has passed through a ton of hands at this point. IGN bought it in 2004, and then IGN was eventually bought by a company owned by News Corp, aka Fox. It changed hands even more, and now it's owned by brands whose parent companies are both NBC Universal and Warner Brothers, who, put out movies. Which, not to be obvious here, but seems like a bit of a conflict of interest. And look, my point is not to hate on Rotten Tomatoes or anyone who works there. I enjoy having a lot of film reviews collected in one place. I even like a lot of the interviews they post. But at the end of the day, this incredibly oversimplified number was never meant to be this meaningful to the TV and film industries. I know I'm not saying something super new here, but the simple good-bad binary that this website encourages just makes conversations around movies more caustic and loud and less thoughtful. I have a book of old Pauline Kael reviews on my shelf that I flip through sometimes. Kael, if you're unaware, was one of the most influential film critics of the 20th century. Sometimes I agree with her and find that her decades-old reviews add insight into a film that I already loved. And other times, I'm completely baffled by her opinions. But I actually read them, I take in her perspective, and by the end, I can see her point of view, even if I don't agree with it. Rotten Tomato scores tend to strip all of that away. Whether it goes up or down, everything lives or dies by this black and white system that doesn't tell you anything actually insightful about the film itself. And lukewarm or mixed reviews just don't seem to really have a place there, with them always being forced to have a tomato or a rotten splat. And just seeing it continue to rise in importance through the years, while great websites that actually encourage deeper discussions around film, like The Dissolve, just died and went away, has been pretty bleak. I know this all sounds terribly negative. I don't have a frothing hatred for Rotten Tomatoes. I just wish that the Tomatometer, the thing that has become important enough that it's literally being built into multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns around the world, would be recognized for what it is. A fun but overly simple method of giving a number to a movie that was made up by some college students in the late 90s and that has been increasingly gamed by studios and distributors both big and small. I do think it can be a fun website to visit. Like, I like scrolling through old reviews from 70s newspapers and having them being placed right alongside current bloggers. I genuinely enjoy that stuff, but at the end of the day, these scores really don't mean that much, and that's something that I've come to recognize more and more. I think I'll end this video with a quote from that Martin Scorsese op-ed that I mentioned earlier. They rate a picture the way you'd rate a horse at a racetrack, a restaurant in a Zagat's Guide, or a household appliance in Consumer Reports. They have everything to do with the movie business and absolutely nothing to do with either the creation or the intelligent viewing of film. The filmmaker is reduced to a content manufacturer and the viewer to an unadventurous consumer.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.